So I enlisted, but again, an interesting fact scenario because most individuals that enlist don't have an education or they graduate high school and then they go straight in. I was already in law school when September 11th occurred, but I didn't want to go as a direct commission. I wanted to do the infantry track. So I actually enlisted as an infantryman in an OCS contract. You had no guarantee that you got an OCS slot. So I went into infantry basic training. So I enlisted as an E4. So I was an E4 because I had education. Then went from infantry officer basic course to OCS as an E5. I joined 100% because of September 11th. My first semester of law school is when September 11th occurred. I never had an inkling or desire necessarily to serve in the military. And I felt that this was my generation's opportunity to serve and calling to serve. And I was able-bodied and I thought it was important for my generation, those that could serve, to serve their country. I entered into the Army. I had done a ton of research. Actually, growing up, had read a lot of force recon diaries. And actually, right after September 11th, one of the first places I went was the Marine Corps recruiting station and asked if they could guarantee me a force recon slot. And they told me that they couldn't guarantee me a force recon slot. And because of that, I didn't become a Marine, join as a Marine, started doing a lot of research, and the SEALs go to our airborne school. A lot of the different accelerated training for infantry is through the Army. So I decided to go Army, and that was why I made that determination.
From that time?
I remember my drill instructor from basic training. I actually still have a letter from him that he sent to me after I first got elected to the State House. He was, I guess, following my political career, and he was stationed at in Tampa at MacDill Air Force Base when I got elected. So he had heard about me and kept up with me. So he sent me a letter. So I do remember I think everybody remembers who their drill sergeants were, but I do remember my drill sergeants well. You know, they, even as a lawyer, they think that you can transition the things that you've done in the military to civilian practice. And I was thinking, and I didn't have a problem getting a job initially, but one of the challenges was, at least from the legal perspective, and I think a lot of your infantrymen, your combat arms type veterans experience this as well, is a lot of the things that you do in the Army doesn't really translate to the civilian world. And even from the legal side, I'm obviously not going to be deciding what we do with detainees and terrorists in the civilian practice. I'm obviously not going to be criminally prosecuting somebody under the UCMJ in civilian practice. Probably the best analogous legal position would be a federal prosecutor, but that's not the direction I wanted to go because I wanted to go into politics. So I went into civil litigation, and there's just no comparison for anything that you've done. So you kind of are 5 years behind the people that you went to law school with in their experience level because you just don't have the same level of experience that they do. Because I came in after, and I do think there's a lot of veterans that fall into this circumstance. I found myself, because I put myself through law school with loans, I was unable to use the GI Bill because you use that post-service, and I already had my law degree. There wasn't any other schooling that I wanted to go to. So I was unable to use the benefits afforded to me under the GI Bill. And we have put a bill together that would allow veterans the opportunity to use that credit that they would get for the GI Bill to apply that to student loans. I had $50,000 worth of student loans just from law school when I got out of the military. Now you can pause those loans during your time of service, but you can't afford, at least I couldn't afford during the time of my service, to pay down that debt at all. So when I got out of active duty, I had 50 grand in student loans from law school and no ability for me to have that to pay back. So it took me a significant amount of time to pay that obligation back. And I think that if you don't take advantage of the GI Bill, veterans should be able to take advantage of a similar program to pay off student debt if they've already incurred that education before they've decided to serve our country. You definitely look at the world a lot differently than you did prior to service. I don't think you will ever forget the training that you went through, especially as an infantryman. The time you spend in the woods training with your buddies, the different military aspects of being an infantryman. I don't think those type of things ever leave you. I mean, you it's gotten better the longer I've been out, but you still walk into a room and the first thing you think about is how you would clear the room. And you think about different escape and entry points. You think about things that most people wouldn't normally think about. But it definitely changes your aspects, especially for those service members who deployed. Seeing the things that you see in a deployed environment, the loss of life of our service members who served, and the commitment to that all of those folks who gave the ultimate sacrifice showed on the battlefield. I think that innately changes all people who serve. Remember that these men and women have volunteered to serve our country, and that we have one of the greatest countries in the world because of that. Less than 1% of the population of the United States can call themselves United States veterans. So it is a very small group of people that were willing to make that sacrifice and raise their right hand to the Constitution and really give up their freedoms for the freedoms of everybody else in America. So I would just encourage people to have utmost and ultimate respect for every service member that has served, regardless of the war that they served in. And any opportunity they have to volunteer at veterans hospitals or give back to the veteran community, I would encourage them to do that.
After I won the medal in 1968, I was sent back to Fort MacArthur, California. That's where we trained. And I was in the papers. I was rated the best physical specimen at my age in the United States Army. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can.
But before I left Fort MacArthur, I'd taken a test for flight school, helicopter school. Pre-flight test, I went up in a helicopter, guy took me up. The written test, the physical test, I took the physical test, I passed it, everything was ready to go. When I got back to Fort MacArthur, California, because of two guys that put their fists up in the air, I was one of the spokesmen for the black athletes, which I wasn't involved in demonstrating. My job was, I felt, was to keep these kids calm. Don't do anything that's going to embarrass them or the country. That's why I was one of the oldest guys on the team in the track and field. And I was called in because someone had put the word out that I was a spokesman for the black athletes. And I said to the major said, Mel, I understand you're supposed to be going to flight school once you get back to the United States. I said, yes, sir. I said, how'd you know that? They had did an investigation on all us military guys. They called all the military guys, the Air Force, Navy, Marine. They called us all in and said, and told us, especially the black guys, that we can't get involved in any kind of demonstration. And we knew that. We officers, we military men, we know we can't get involved in any kind of anything that's going to, degrade us or the military or our country. He said, yes, sir. I said, yes, I'm supposed to go to flight school. He says, are you involved? I said, I'm not involved in anything. I told him what I told you. I'm trying to keep these kids calm. If they want to demonstrate, I said to them, that's what I told him. If they want to demonstrate, I said they do what they want. Everybody can do what the individual demonstration if they wanted to. You can wear a black scarf on your head. You can put a black ribbon on you. You can do whatever you want to do. Okay? And I said, let me say something to you, Colonel. If I was not in the military, I would demonstrate. Because I've been to hell and back in my life as a young man. You don't understand not being a black man. But we had to go through being brought up in America. And his is 1968 and we've still been treated this way. For example, sir, when I came back in 1964, I took my mother to the doctor. They had a little room about big as that desk over there and 2 chairs, and up front was a waiting room. And this lady, I went up front to the front desk and I says, why are we sitting back here? That's where you're supposed to sit, where y'all supposed to sit. And I'm just back from Vietnam. I went back to my mom. I said, let's go. She says, what's the problem? I said, Mom, we don't sit in the back of the bus anymore. I just got back from fighting for this country. I've seen young men die for this country. I got to sit in the back of a room to wait for this doctor? He's not worth it. So he came up there and called me boy.
The doctor did?
Yeah. Boy, if you don't like it, you can get the hell out of here. Now, I'm a black belt karate. Okay? If my mother had not been there, I'd have been probably in jail. I said, sir, if you open your mouth to me one more time, you're going to be in trouble. I'm leaving your building. Mom, I'm taking my mother out of here and she'll never come back again. He didn't open his mouth. I said, I just got back from Vietnam. You don't want to talk to me like that. And I told him, I said, look, I've seen young white men die for this country, for you. And young black men die for you. And you're going to treat me and people the way you treated them? Treat them, come into your office? So we walked out. I got in the car. My mother was crying. And I hit the steering wheel so hard, bruised my, in fact, I bruised my hand real bad. In fact, I eventually broke that hand. And I said, Mom, I said, you don't understand. My mother passed away like 5 years ago. She's 96. And I said, you don't understand why I get emotional like this. I said, young men have died for this country. And because people with crooked minds, hating people because of the color of their skin, why? We all Americans. I said, Mom, everybody has the same color blood. It runs the same color, red. It don't matter what color we are.
Why are you here? You're a librarian. And I said, sir, I got drafted. And he was a graduate of Yale at ROTC. And he said, I'm going to do something that the Army never does. I'm going to give you a job that meets your qualifications. So instead of doing film cleaning, he sent me essentially to run this library. And in Vietnam, there were at least 32 because I was in one. Trailer libraries that were set up for essentially the enlisted men and officers to come in to use the library facility to do a whole lot of recreational reading or other types of things. So I ran a trailer library in Cu Chi, Vietnam, right in front of the 25th Admin Service Club for about 11 months and 19 days.
So I didn't realize that they had these trailer libraries in Vietnam, so can you just talk a little bit more about what the library was like, what kind of materials were in the library, who used them, that sort of thing?
Well, it was a double wide trailer, and the unique thing about it is that it had 2 air conditioning units. And in Vietnam, if you're an officer, you had an officer's club with an air conditioning unit. If you're an enlisted person, you had the ability to look at the officers as they came in and went out of their air conditioning. So this is a place that people congregated, partly because it was quiet, partly because it was air conditioned, partly because Peter didn't bug you. So people came in from stand down, from being in the field, come in for 2 or 3 days and stand down, and they come in and basically sleep. But I had about 5,000 books there. I had reference collection. I had hometown newspapers. I had about 3,000 or 4,000 rented books, McNaughton both. It was a plan that a publisher, Baker and Taylor, offered. So I had fiction. I had nonfiction material. I had other material that cycled throughout. Plus, I had these paperback books that basically came in through special services, which was where the library is situated. And they were given to people to take out in their field, you know. So I had a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I had people coming in there that were base camp warriors. And in any base camp situation or any combat situation, essentially for one soldier in the field, you had maybe 5 people back home that did HR, that did medical, that did all these support services. So I was with the base camp warrior club in the 25th Admin Division, which is the biggest division of the biggest company in the division. So I had people coming in, for example. This one fellow came in every single day, and he got Ayer's newspaper periodical directory. He wrote to every single hometown newspaper in America, same letter, and he had them mail a copy, gift copy, to him. He got mail every single day, and it's like money in the bank when you get mail. I had other people come in basically because they wanted to record. I had tape recorders in the back. They wanted to record music so that they could take the discs or tape, reel-to-reel tape. That's the level of technology. Back with them out to their field situation. So they basically when they were in the field, could play music. You've seen, what is that Coppola movie? It's gone out of my head. Apocalypse Now, right? So you get the helicopter playing, you know, the symphony. Well, that wasn't really the case, but really what you'd have is you'd have the Rolling Stones coming out of an armored personnel carrier. You know? So these people had audio ability because they'd buy equipment in the PX and then pack it into their, you know, either their hooch or their other places. I was in bunkers in Cu-Chi for attached to people's hooches. I mean, to the hooch, that had better sound equipment than any place I've ever seen. Yeah, because they had other things as well there. But anyhow, so my experience is running the trailer library was, okay, let's make the best of the circumstances. So essentially, I use that place to perfect my professional degree, right? So what did I do? I get all these new books in, you know, like the McNaughton shipments every 2-3 weeks. So I sit there with the typewriter and type out a mimeograph sheet with the bibliographic entry and a small blurb describing the contents of the work, right? And I then mimeographed it up, right, and sent it around base camp so everyone would know, oh, there's something happening at the library. So they liked it so much, you know, they gave me a Bronze Star for it. Then I said, okay, wait a minute, there's something about 25th Infantry Division, and it had a head of Special Services that was really interested in taking the tropic lightning motif, because 25th Infantry Division was started in Hawaii, and they had this electric strawberry, which was basically a red, well, it's on some of the material they gave me, a red sort of a diamond-shaped leaf, but the lightning was in red. So everything harkened back to Hawaii. So the idea was that here are 2 trailer libraries, how can we make it look like Hawaii? And the answer is you dump mound sand so it looks like an island. You bring in some palm trees from the bush, you put them in there, and the guy planted grass seeds. So I had the only push lawnmower, to my knowledge, in the entire South Vietnam area district. So I basically, they gave me another Bronze Star for that. The 3rd Bronze Star I got because I really wanted to help out on campus, and there was a library that was staffed by a person who wasn't a librarian in the surgical hospital on campus, right? On campus, good Lord, at base camp. The 3rd Surge Hospital essentially had a library of medical texts. So I said, okay, I'll spend a couple of days. I went over actually for about 3 weeks in the afternoon and cataloged, right? I had not done professional level cataloging, but I did find a copy of Dewey. So I cataloged their collection, right? So they gave me another Bronze Star for that.
80th MASH, which is on the same post there in Fubai. And that's where I really had my most traumatic experiences, probably. Whenever they flew a helicopter load of people in, the chaplain would be there, and especially when they brought in dead bodies. You always had to have some chaplain there to sign the little tag that they had there. One night, I got a call, I don't know what time of that was, and they have a triage process in the Army, in the hospital. If you're just wounded a little bit, they work on you right away. If you're wounded enough to get worked on, you can go back, they work on you next. And if you're hopeless, they just kind of give you medication and put you off there. And that's where the chaplain usually ends up, with those people who are dying. Usually it wasn't too heavy as far as anything, because most of the guys were knocked out. And, yeah. But one night I went in there, and there was this young fellow who had just been blown to flinders, but he was still alert. And his face was still unmarred, but the rest of his body just all smashed up. And so I was talking to him, and we talked about home, and things like that, and we talked until the lights went out in his eyes. Still gets me today.
But back to your philosophy about presence, being there.
Yeah, and I realized that that's our role, is to talk to people about home, theologically, whatever it wants to be. And it's those experiences that gave me whatever post-traumatic stress disorder out of Vietnam I had, which I had some, and worked with later on. It was a very difficult year for me, because I was old enough to be the father of a lot of these guys by now.
when sometime you'd see a totally healthy, like your age. How old are you, 18?
16.
Oh, you're a little younger. 18-year-old, a perfectly healthy looking 18-year-old that would be dead on arrival. And it was just mind-boggling. And then I saw, I was on triage one night, and a man came in with, didn't have legs or arms, but he was talking. It was just mind-boggling. Something I probably never will see again.
The Montagnards really loved Indians. They would have worn war paint if they were allowed to, but they weren't allowed to do that. They were allowed to keep the red handkerchiefs. A lot of them wore red handkerchiefs just to identify as being more of Native American. It wasn't all red. Some of them were yellow. It was just the traditional thing that they started going out in the field and going into war that they identified with Native Americans.
So as a Native American, how did that make you feel?
It was something special. I really liked that. They really prized me because I was Native American. They they thought I was just God sent to them, that they had a real Indian there and within the camp that they could identify with.
Did your relationship with your father change after you had both served?
Yes, it did. My dad, for all the early years, he hardly ever spoke about the World War II experiences. He talked a little bit about being in North Africa and all that place, but he wouldn't get specific. But when I came back, we talked a lot. He shared a lot of different things with me, what he did, how scared he was. I think he thought that we could relate because of my experience in Vietnam. And so, yes, there was a lot when I came back that we shared. War is a negative thing for a lot of folks. And it is negative. People die. People get maimed. But from a context of a Native American, it's part of who you are, And in the old days, they used to call what they called taking coup, where you faced your enemy face to face, and you lived to tell about it. And so there's a tradition that goes behind that for every tribe. It doesn't matter whose tribe it is. Every tribe has that tradition, and it's a part of growing up. It's a part of being who you are. You can face that fear, look it in the eye, and say, I did that. And that tradition carries through your work, your family. You pass that on to your kids, and it's not war. It's actually being who you are and facing, whether it's death or whether it's just something that's the stress of the job, but standing there and actually facing it and doing the things that you need to do to be a person, not only a Native American, but as a person, and actually being the person that you were that you were meant to be.
And as we're getting on the helicopters, I had all my maps prepared. I was like really, I wanted to demonstrate that I could sort of take care of myself and understand this, and I was pretty good with maps. So I looked at the operation commander, the Special Forces major. And I said, so where exactly are we landing now? You know, and I was holding up the map of Vietnam. And he turned the map over to the Cambodian side, and he said, there. So within a month, even several weeks of being there, we were operating secretly in Cambodia. We did go to this weapons cache. We found a great cache. There was not contact in that operation, but that was the first sort of realization that all was not what it seemed, or at least what you read in the newspapers, and that we were operating in Cambodia, even at that time. And there was another one, much tougher on me. But when I was in Chao Duc, I was on an operation in a part of the province where the VC were very active, and we were in this little tiny hamlet in this mountainous region of the Delta, which was very unusual. And we were getting ready to sort of bed down for the night, and there was a mortar attack. And there was a bunch of civilian casualties. And there was this one young girl who was very badly hurt, and we knew we had to get her to medical care. The only way to do that was to go back to the district capital, which was this very dangerous drive in the dark to the district capital, where she could be treated at a local hospital or air evacuated. And we rode back. I was late at night, and we went back through this pretty bad territory. And I think there were so many people that were wounded in the Jeep that I was in that I had to sit on the hood of the Jeep. So I was sitting on the hood of the Jeep with my weapon, listening to the mournful, cries of these people who were wounded in the dark. And that memory, more than almost anything else, stuck with me. I don't remember if she lived or not. That was pretty tough.